Welcome everyone to the September edition of Space Data Hackers. We are a meetup that gets people together who are fans of space and data. And in this edition, we are going to be talking all about the NASA International Space Apps Challenge Hackathon, which takes place next weekend. So just a quick overview and intro. I'm Mike Doyle. I am the president and co-founder of Space Northwest. We are an organization dedicated to maximizing the potential of the Pacific Northwest to impact humanity's future in space. And one of the ways that we do that is we get this little thing called the NASA International Space Apps Challenge Hackathon going, organized for Seattle. We actually kind of grew out of this event and other events that are meant to bring more people to the work of space. And the amazing thing about NASA Space Apps is that it is for everyone. It brings everyone together around the globe to work on challenges that NASA has put together with its space agency partners around the world to improve life on Earth and benefit our future in space. So tonight, we'll talk about what Space Apps is all about, give you some pro tips for how to have a great weekend. Michael Patrick, who has been at every Space App Seattle that I have been to, and has mentored a lot of teams, been on a lot of teams, will give some of his best practices for making the most of the weekend as well as you get into the technical side of things. Okay, so where did Space Apps come from? Kind of came from this guy, Ron Garan. He is a NASA astronaut, retired. He worked on the International Space Station. He was always very involved in NGO kind of work in developing countries, right? Trying to solve problems on the ground. When he was in space, he had an overview effect kind of moment where he realized that if you combine the orbital perspective, right, that what you get from being in orbit with the perspective from on the ground, you could really solve humanity's problems. It's a combination of, it is a matter of combining those perspectives. And so Space Apps was born as a way to take space data, that orbital view, and bring it to the masses on the ground to using tools of mass collaboration to figure out how to solve the challenges that we face. His book, The Orbital Perspective, is pretty good, and it talks about his experience helping build ISS and the founding of Space Apps. Oops, let's go back. Moving too fast. There we go. Okay, so what's going to happen come next weekend, next Friday, October 6th? Friday night is kickoff night. We do some introductions. You'll get to hear from our sponsors, who we're deeply grateful for. They are the folks who make things happen. And we will also have a little bit of an introductory talk for the kickoff night by John Conifay. He is CEO of Integrate. That's a software company building for the space industry. Pretty interesting product. We'll move into team formation, talk about the challenges, and then you'll get the opportunity to start interacting with other folks who might be interested in joining your team, or maybe you're interested in joining somebody else's team. There'll be time spent in networking and figuring out what things look interesting and for people to come together. And then we'll have a round of pitching where people who have come up with ideas, maybe leading a team, might come up and give their pitch. This is my idea. This is what I need. And maybe you'd like to join my team. It's optional. Don't have to pitch if you don't want to. That's not your thing. But it's a great way to get ideas out there and find out what other folks are doing, and maybe you want to join their team. On Saturday, that's when the hacking really starts. You'll be coming in at 9 in the morning and working to bring your project, bring your idea to life. We have a tutorial in the morning for working with space data. It's going to be given by Boris Cortez from Amazon Web Services in their aerospace and satellite practice. And you'll spend most of the day working on your project, trying to figure things out, getting everything set up, and then executing. In the evening at 5 p.m., we will have a keynote talk from NASA astronaut Wendy Lawrence. And a little bit later that evening, we'll have a presentation on how to make presentations. I'll touch on that a little bit later. When you come back in on Sunday, you're going to have time to do hacking for sure, but you should be pivoting to getting your presentation. Like on Saturday night, thinking about what your presentation is going to look like is good, but really Sunday morning, that's when you really want to be refining it. Maybe some people on the team are working on the hacking, some are working on the presentation, and you want it all to come together. We'll have pitch practice, presentation practice, so that you can get some feedback from experienced pitch mentors to refine how you present. And then in the afternoon at 2 p.m., we'll be doing our presentations. You'll get 4 minutes to present your project to our panel of judges. They have 1 minute of Q&A, and we go through all the teams. The judges go into deliberation following that, and we will announce our local awards. There's basically 2 levels of awards within Space Apps. There's the local level, which is for all the folks who are in Seattle. And then there's the global level, and we will pick 1 to 3 teams that will advance to the global level of judging. So very important thing to note, all projects, if you want to be considered for global judging, need to be fully submitted on the Space Apps Challenge website by 11:59 p.m. on Sunday. So those global nominees could even come in, like a project could come in and be considered for global judging if it comes in after the local presentations and our awards, and we've wrapped up the hackathon and we've all gone home. So the judges will reconvene during the week to select the project or projects that go to global, and we will announce those global nominees on Sunday, October 15th. Okay. All right. So what do you need to do to get ready? Definitely review the challenges before we started the call. As I heard, some folks were already looking at them. There are 30 challenges in the Bring Your Own Challenge category out there, and lots of things to choose from. You definitely want to start going through them and getting some ideas of what you would like to do. If you have folks that you know in your network, friends, family, what have you, that want to join you at Space Apps, start thinking about bringing a couple. I found that it was always good when I was doing the hackathon to have like 1 or 2 folks who I knew who would come with me and do some things, and then build the rest of the team on site from people that I'd never met before. And that's one of the amazing things about Space Apps, is that you'll have the opportunity to connect with like-minded individuals and form a team, form a bond, and have a great time. We are actually having a session tomorrow at Amazon's reInvent building in South Lake Union area of Seattle, to give you a program on getting started with space data on AWS. Boris Cortez, who I mentioned before, from Amazon Web Services, will be leading that. And I think you definitely want to check that out if you're local and you can make it. And if you can't, there's also NASA's virtual boot camp that's on the Space Apps Challenge resources page. Tons of videos and resources that you can use to start getting familiar with what you need to know for making the most of your weekend. Okay. Kickoff night. As I said, if you can come solo, you can come with a friend, whatever it does, whatever you choose to do, come and start making your team. You want to make sure that you've got a diverse set of skills, not just a whole bunch of people who do programming or data science, but try to find the designers who could make the website that you create look good or create a great presentation. This is one of the great things about space apps and one of the great things about pretty much any project. It takes many different skills and perspectives to make the best project that you can make. Don't be afraid to pitch. When you're doing that, be sure that you're projecting your vision of where the project is going, so that you're inspiring folks to join in on it. And be sure to ask for the kinds of skills and backgrounds that you might need. If you need somebody who knows climate science, go ahead and ask for it. Somebody who knows a particular front-end framework, ask for it. And as you start to develop your ideas, don't get too attached to them, right? Pivot when something doesn't seem to be gaining traction or there aren't people with the skills that you need. You can choose a different idea and keep moving and still have a great time. When you're hacking, reach out for help if you get stuck. We're going to have mentors on site. They'll be checking in with you, but you can also check in with them. And they can be so helpful. I remember from my space apps experience, if the mentors weren't there, it would have been, a lot of hurt. But they really hold a special place in my heart and my mind when I think back on the bit of help that they were able to give me to get me over a hurdle that otherwise I couldn't have gotten over. Use your judgment about when you're flowing well and when you need to step back. If you get stuck, don't stay there forever. Just kind of stay away, take a step back, and see how your brain will actually sort things out. Don't bang up against a wall. Give yourself a little bit of time to reset and refresh. Sleep. I think in the early days of the hackathons, sleep was considered for the weak. Not so. We do not have, the building is going to close at 10, and there's no sleepover for Space App Seattle. And you don't have to sleep, but you're going to be more able to attack your tasks if you do. And definitely you don't want to find yourself all burned out and incoherent when you go and present in front of the judge. Like I said, you can pivot, you can choose to do something different, but keep going, right? Because you will find a way to make something great, and you definitely want to share it with everyone at the hackathon. Okay. So presenting, there's a perfect little model of the perfect space apps presentation. Um, and it's called 240 Seconds of Glory. We spend 240 seconds on Saturday night going through this. I won't go through it all right now, but I'll just kind of point out the overall framework and note that it's divided into 4 sections, right? Um, 1 minute for each, where you're initially getting the attention of the audience, who you are, and what your story is about. And then you start describing the problem that you're solving. And you make people understand why it's important and why you care. Then you go into your innovation. What is your project all about? What's your solution all about? And then start thinking about the future, right? What kind of impact would this have if you took it beyond the hackathon? And you should definitely be thinking about taking it beyond the hackathon because so many great ideas are born here. And we really want to see how you can change the world with them. These are the award categories. And it's really useful to look at these and think about these categories because that can help you tailor how you go after them. So and the kind of project that you're going to do. So best use of data is kind of self-explanatory. The application that uses data in the best way. Best use of technology. It used to be called best use of hardware to kind of like separate it from data, but it's more broad than that. So an innovative technology solution, that's what you're after in this category. Best mission concept, inspiring the judges with how you thought about the mission, and most inspirational project that really makes people think and oh, wow. We also have optional categories. We don't necessarily award these, but the judges have the discretion of awarding these categories if they feel that a team particularly earned it. So that's in storytelling, global connection, a solution that brings people together, art and technology, and local impact, a project that demonstrates the greatest potential for impacting where you are. And then the global judging, there will be up to 3 teams nominated. It's based on how many teams participate in Space Apps. But at least one team will advance to global judging, and results are announced in December. And at the global level, they have a galactic impact category and best use of science, which is about how you're using the scientific method. And then after the hackathon, um, you know, the I think one of the most important things to remember is that you don't have to win a prize. You don't have to get an award or make it all the way to have an amazing time and have an impact. And we deeply encourage you to continue your journey once you've gone through the hackathon. We have Space Data Hackers last Thursday of every month. And we also have coming up in December for the entrepreneurial minded, Techstars Startup Weekend Space. That is kind of a hackathon for those of you who aren't familiar with Startup Weekend. But the thing that you are creating over the course of the weekend is a business. So we did one of those last year, and we did it in 2019, and they're fantastic experiences. A little bit of a different, kind of subject matter, but really fantastic networking, creating teams, bonding, being part of a greater mission. Okay, so I think that I am going to come to a halt now, just to let you know. We got reminder, get started with space data on AWS tomorrow. Space apps next Friday. Go to spaceappseattle.org to sign up for all the things you want to sign up for. and I will stop sharing and hand over to Michael, who will give you kind of the deep dive on how to have a great hacking experience. Okay, you should be able to go.
Can people see the screen?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm Michael Patrick, and peripherally, I've been dealing with space data probably since, on and off the first Landsat mission, but primarily since about the year 2000, when I went back to school and got a geography degree focusing on GIS. And since then, I've dealt with all sorts of stuff from multispectral imagery and things like Landsat, visible imagery, etc. And the interesting thing is I am not a developer or a coder or whatever. I can only code enough to be dangerous or to read some instructions to ask other people for help. So that kind of positions me somewhere between that beginner and intermediate category as far as technical skill. And the purpose of this presentation had kind of a wide audience, because addressing everybody from the very beginner, to the expert level. So it ranges quite broadly. And their definitions, when you read those challenge statements of what is a beginner or intermediate or advanced, there's a huge, when they say advanced, that's an order of magnitude, I would say, in terms of knowledge, skills, and experience. So it isn't, to me at least, a horribly helpful thing when you're looking at one of those challenges. But I'll use that same structure that they call out. And it is not paging. Okay, so my hack experience over like the past 20 years, recently in the past couple of years, I've been in a lot of Department of Defense, national security innovation, and my teams have been finalists in many of those, with the National Geospatial Agency, and the NIST, et cetera, et cetera. So I've been through a wide variety of hackathon experiences. And my first hackathon experience had no data. I messed around till like it was 2 hours ahead of the submission deadline. And as a result, I had about 2 hours to make an entry. So I just wrote an essay, one of the challenges, and it was basically on the cognitive ability of people wrapping their head around climate change. Why is it so hard? And I came up with a simple framework of the ancient Greek elements, the 4 elements of earth, air, fire, and water, wrote an essay on that. And somehow or another, that ended up being a global nominee. But in that, I addressed how our language about the air, weather, et cetera, actually is pretty sparse, and we needed a whole new vocabulary for people to relate to the atmosphere. And so as a beginner writing an essay, that encompasses the broad scope of the challenges in the hackathon. You don't necessarily have to move data, so to speak. So one of the other ones, my team formation is usually at the last minute. Whoever doesn't have a team, we gather together. And I had done primarily data sorts of things and thought it might be interesting to do a mechanical thing, an actual piece of hardware. And I know basically nothing about mechanical engineering or any of that stuff, but my team members actually did, and we came up with the challenge specifically called for a lunar rover, and I call it yet another rover. And so I came up with this concept of using a reaction wheel pogo stick that would hop across the moon. And as it hopped, it kicks up dust, and a laser scanner does a spectral analysis of the dust that's being kicked up. And basically, I have a bunch of friends in the oil patch, exploratory geologists, and they go across the landscape in a grid. And I wanted something to do that in a similar fashion. So our little critter here is capable of covering hundreds of thousands. If you took one Falcon 9 and launched, can carry like 100 of these things, drop them on the moon, it could cover a vast area in a very short amount of time. And again, this was strictly conceptual in nature. We obviously did not build the hardware, etc., but we had a lot of good math and physics and stuff behind it. And it was interesting. The judges for that event were really not in the space area, unlike this round of judges. But what Michael said about the you don't necessarily win the award. It was rather gratifying that the real space scientists that were the mentors and stuff came up afterwards and told us, you know, that that's a really solid idea. And so also learned a lot from them as they gave input on the system. And I personally learned a heck of a lot about various things in mechanical engineering, et cetera. So I walked away knowing a lot more about that stuff than I began. The next hackathon was, one of the goals was dealing with space junk and collecting it, et cetera. And they wanted a game. And since I almost have never played a computer game, and actually I kind of dislike computer games, because when you're a geographer, you know, GIS is basically playing a war game on the real world in a sense. And but everybody else on my team wanted to do the game. So that's what we did. But in the course of doing the game, it occurred to me that most of the game displays for space games and stuff are the classic sphere in the orbit, showing the orbits and stuff. And I realized that the most important things about the game are delta V. And so that kind of inspired this head-up interface, which shows all the different characteristics of delta V for rendezvous with different drones and catchers and stuff, and that the interceptor would have in a clear manner and fashion, so that the operator could. And then what we tacked it on with is our game could be competitive and crowdsourced, and the winner gets a ride on Blue Origin, for instance. And then when you get hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people playing, human beings can computationally do in our heads, our pattern matching, what supercomputers might find very, very difficult. And so I was told by some of the judges, they thought that making it accessible to even ordinary people might yield insight about these orbital dynamic situations that may not otherwise occur. So the team was very broad. We had a marketing kind of person, and she knew how to draw and stuff, and she learned how to build little 3D models. We built a little prototype in Unity, and she provided those in the website. So we were able to incorporate a wide variety of skill sets. And then one of the last ones was they wanted to story tell about the Kessler syndrome to the general public. And this was basically no code. And we talked about how do people get it in, how do people imagine in their heads what orbital dynamics is. And we came up with the metaphor of Hollywood. In other words, we would use something like Grand Theft Auto or Fast and the Furious Orbital Menace, which would basically, if you think about all the debris and the other spacecraft as being in lanes on the freeway, could we come up with visual metaphors of that so people, when the situation is described, they can relate to something from their own personal experience. So we looked at the basic trajectories of spacecraft and how they operated in the platforms operated in orbit, and kind of sifted that down into a couple of different types and came up with a potential visual display based on a freeway metaphor to explain it to people. And so again, this was a no code. I know the coding people, the high-end advanced people, are rolling their eyes right now. But if for a beginner or somebody approaching the NASA Space Apps Hackathon, I'm trying to make the point is that the entry level is really, really low, and you can do some amazing things without necessarily having a huge technical background. So the team formation is an interesting thing, is a very interesting thing. And so somewhat for myself, I can pick a challenge out of that list and then attempt to recruit a team. And if you have a long lead time and lots of friends, that works out, that may work out because you have a long time. If you're down to the last minute on Friday evening or whatever, that can be problematic. But if it is Friday and you still don't have a team or are looking for a team, I highly recommend just anybody. Don't necessarily get hung up on the skill sets. Shift your project to the knowledge, skills and experience that are available rather than maybe what my pet idea was. The other one is to just form a team, and then as a team, go through the challenges and figure, make a list, vote on them, prioritize them, sort through them that resonates with everybody. And the last is the go it alone, which is the pick one of the challenges solo or pick your own challenge. It removes a lot of the fun and the interaction. On the other hand, if push comes to shove and you're really attached to your idea, that is a possibility. But keep in mind that if you do pick your own challenge, you're not eligible for that global judging, etc. So one of the things early on in team formation is getting a mutual consensual reality of where everybody is in terms of skill level, etc. And not to, I would say first and foremost, that's the first conversation to have, so everybody knows what the capabilities of each other are. Then after you have your team, some dynamics as far as a team leader, project manager, or herder, or whatever you want to call it. I personally highly recommend having somebody that's watching the clock because when I get heads down, it's I will run it right to the wire, so to speak. And if you have a bunch of people working together that are depending on inputs and outputs from one another, having a facilitator. And on one of my teams, we had a elderly lady who only had her cell phone and she had no technical knowledge or whatever, but she had raised 12 kids and had a finely honed skill for being very nice, but reminding people of, you know, what was happening and just checking in with everybody in a continual rotation, etc. So uh, one doesn't necessarily, but you can appoint yourself because it is your idea or whatever, and then obviously the team can elect their own. But even if you do appoint yourself, my recommendation would be to have the other people check in on that idea. It's quite possible somebody on your team is far more qualified for that than I am myself. The divvying up the tasks can be problematic, and in such a very, very short period of time, it is best, what I would call it, best to have bubbles in case something doesn't work or you can't get something running or whatever, being able to bridge across that without having some, whether that's a synthetic data set or whatever, some way not to get blocked if something early on or in the middle becomes a very large issue. Like you decide you're going to train an AI model, a machine learning model, and it ends up taking 36 hours to train. There should be an alternate parallel strategy to deal with that. One of the things with the team also is, after the knowledge, skills, and experience, mutual awareness is, why are people there? Or, everybody has their own reasons and stuff. And if you end up being the team lead or just even another team member, knowing why people, well, I want to learn about this, or I want to exercise my skill doing this because I never get to do that at work. Knowing what each other, why you're at the hackathon, a wonderful opportunity to get help and create relationships between people. There are some that are just heavily competitive, and I observed one or two teams that they just wanted to win the thing and kind of had no patience for members of their team that weren't, at super expert level, et cetera, and they got kind of shoved to the wayside. So I'm, very few instances of that happening. But if the team's goal is to, go hardcore, everybody should be on board with that at the beginning. Or what, if everybody's learning skills, et cetera, to be patient. If I decide I'm going to learn about a new sensor platform I've never used before, and it's in the critical path, well, we should be patient with that because that's the reason the person is there. And the general learning opportunity is, on teams I've had, is encouraging people to talk about what they're doing out loud while they're doing it. Because it's amazing how much you can learn from people just describing, what they're working on and where they got it from and what their different strategies and stuff might be. Kind of support learning by osmosis, etc. So one of the other things that I would say is critical in that collaboration is deciding early on what kind of platform. You could do everything by email on Instagram, I suppose, but there's a lot of platforms out there, Slack, Microsoft Teams, Discord, and shared files on Google Drive and that sort of thing. Over the past couple of years, my personal preference is Discord because it kind of strikes the right balance between simplicity and complexity. That it doesn't, it's not really deep, but it's deep enough. And even people that are very new to collaboration platforms seem to be able to figure out Discord faster than Slack or for teams. And the disadvantage is if you use the free Slack, is they don't make it really obvious that it's unless you upgrade, you can't get your data out of it. And it has a threshold of like 1,000 messages or something, and it starts dropping off the earlier stuff in the free version. That may have changed, but we ran into that with a large team once. The and once you do get a convention or a collaboration environment set up, it's whoever is the team lead or the collective consciousness come up with some conventions and agreements about how to use it. And that's real simple stuff, like on our discords is everybody picked one of the reaction emoticons. I have a guy with a smiley face with a cowboy hat on, and so whenever we read something, I flag it so everybody knows that Michael has read this. And so it's really easy to see who has seen what and what order. And that situational awareness comes in really useful, especially if you have somebody new drop into your team. Having a collaboration environment, they can catch up really quick. Or if you have to collect a bunch of stuff to present to a mentor, okay, we're having this problem, and you have 40, posts dealing with the problem, you can just copy and paste that, and that dialogue gets them up to speed really, really fast. So the other problematic thing I've noticed, using any collaboration environment is when people DM between one another, it starts out as a general conversation, and then it gets into specifics and then into technical details, but it hasn't been captured where everybody can see it. Right. And so that's one of the hardest things to manage, is having people have their discussions within the channels. And there's some basic organizational things, is you should have, your team site, and then you channels or whatever label they give it in whatever application you're using, set up some simple ones there. And then also everybody should have their own workspace where they can collect stuff and their own thoughts and things before moving it to a challenge. So if anybody needs to jump in and help them, they can look inside the notes channel and go, oh, okay, this is where you're at. So I can't say enough good things about Discord, really. And I have about 30 years on collaboration systems. So when we're looking at all of this, we should not forget this. The overall theme is this transform to open science. And so I've been an open source contributor. I'm contribute to OpenStreetMap, for instance, and help out different projects around the world doing different things, from watching glaciers to whale watching and all sorts of that stuff. And this is to keep in mind how you would take whatever it is that you're creating, and then making it so this average citizen, or even not so average citizen, some sort of group could use your application as the basis of some sort of open science project. And with some imagination, since that's the overall theme, it is probably very, very doable to do that. And so when we look through this immense list of challenges, some people were not aware, because the way they have it set up is when you click on that, it takes you to a detail of the challenge. And it's really, really important to read the objectives, etc., because in my humble opinion, you can waste a lot of time not and miss the target with their going after. And some of this, some of the detailed explanations, like when I read through some of these, it's, oh, there's already a platform in the world that does that. And, you know, which brings to mind is that maybe I don't have to code something. Maybe I could make a Discord server that's set up to study a science problem, right? To take people, onboard them from knowing nothing into being a contributor in observations or analysis or whatever. So it isn't, some of these do not necessarily require any coding, but rather a mashup of existing sorts of technologies out there in the world. And especially since there's a minimal amount of crosstalk sometimes between, you know, different vertical markets. In your own personal work, you might be familiar with generally available technology where somebody in the building across the street from you uses an entirely different set. So bringing our outside world experience of the tools that we use just simply every day can be very valuable in the basis of solving some of these problems. So the getting that transformed open science, keeping the theme in mind, that's a big deal in the world today. Because once people start contributing to something, they feel they have some sort of control over it. Now, a lot of our science-based narratives at the moment are entirely fear-based. And so the way to combat fear is to help people get their own nose and their own hands into the problem and building some sort of consensual reality around these issues. So we're kind of moving into the intermediate category. So I might be a software developer but have no experience with either remote sense space data or spatial data in general. And so one of the things is, if I have an idea or whatever, what am I trying to get to? In other words, is a proof of concept sufficient, or is a prototype or a minimum viable product what's necessary? Google Scholar is your friend. The data sets are very, very large, and doing time series, especially over years and years and decades, is problematic. So there's lots of portals out there and other services, especially like Google Earth Engine, and I guess Amazon now has some, but there's a lot of documentation to read through. Pick a realistic area of interest and some temporal constraints, and then think about what other data you might need to support that. Maybe you need county boundaries or something like that. So Google Scholar is your friend. Take your location, your area of interest, satellite, type of sensor, and you will get a ready list, adjust the time to right now, and you'll be able to see what other people have done. When you create that area of interest, it's usually a shape file or KML file. You can make one of those really easy. If you don't have a GIS system or the portal doesn't support that, you can go to Google Maps or Google Earth portal and make a shape file, which you will use continually in your searches. And you can download that, then move it and upload it to the search profile. There is a lot of supporting data out there that people have already put together. So if you're bringing it back to the, you know, people, population data and stuff like that, you know, if your application says, I'm going to have this benefit for this many people or whatever, these aren't necessarily space data, although they're derived from it, but they're kind of the glue which takes your space data and allows you to glue it to the real world. So think about the other supporting data. when doing space observation are usually, at least mine, is weather. And so if I pick an area of interest, I usually go to the cloud cover website to get what is the probability I'm going to have a data set with cloud-free days, right? Don't pick northern Venezuela, for instance. There's like 2 cloud-free days a year. There's a lot of portals out there, and if you're new to the game, the data is like raw data, bits from the satellite. But what's more usable if you're new is the science-ready data sets that are especially along different themes, where NASA has already on a real-time basis, fusing some of this data together to support different sorts of inquiry. And they're divided up by cryosphere, ocean, biology, etc. The hardest thing for a beginner is the immense number of platform sensors, the bands of those sensors, and the modes that they operate in. And this picture is like 2015. This is already 10 years out of date. So wading through this is a non-trivial task. And what's important is, if your idea applies to the Earth somewhere, the first thing is, what is the signature of that thing? And that allows you then to look at what sorts of sensors operating on different bands will make it possible for you to discern your phenomena in terms of the immense constellation of data platforms that's out there. When you get to the end, you can spend a lot of time doing visualization and things like that. So the dumping it, in my humble opinion, to a like Google Earth Pro or Google Maps or some pre-existing service with an interface already created allows you to spend more time on the processing and the actual science of it, rather than spending hours trying to get a button to work someplace. And this is in the middle. That blue square is Canadian ice satellite, radar satellite imagery put into Google Earth, and then it allows me to annotate it with other supporting data sets. So simple is as simple does. My brother owns property in North Montana this summer. Wildfires are at his doorstep. No cell, or very minimal cell service out there. And because they don't necessarily have reliable keeping smartphones charged, so he has a flip phone, simple backcountry phone. And so using the NASA FIRMS data, the fire information site, which is basically text information, is there a fire here, pixel coordinates, etc., is I was able to take the FIRMS data and then, using a text to voice converter, give him where the fire was in relation to his property. Is it 5 minutes north of here? Is it within 5 miles of the property? At what direction? How big is it? Right? The simplest. And if you didn't answer the phone, it would just drop to his voicemail. And by listening to the voicemails, it could give him an idea of how close the fire was advancing on his property. And so that's just an example how you can take like a text file from NASA and turn it into a critical feed for all those hikers, farmers, loggers, and people that work in remote locations. So just a last word about the mentors and judges. So the judges look really good this time around. They have expertise in our domain. You never know with judges. So I kind of regard it as sometimes, for me, it's the comments from the mentors that I work towards. I really don't much care about winning or getting an award or whatever, but getting good feedback from the mentors and there are some absolutely wonderful ones. One we had was a person on the space junk collection thing. They had worked on space junk making, that anti-satellite mission from the Aegis cruiser that took down one of our old satellites in an ASAT test. But they gave incredible amounts of insight into the problem set for us. So with that, I thank you very much, and I apologize that I did not get into the minutia for the advance, but as you go deeper and deeper, that specific thing's impossible to cover in a talk this short. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael. Any questions? Everybody's ready to hack.
So what are we going to go over tomorrow in the in-person event?
The in-person event is going to be specifically hands-on working with space data on AWS. So sourcing the data, getting it into AWS constructs, and bringing it to life using visualization tools.
And will you guys be there?
I'm going to be there. I'm going to be hands-on.
I will definitely be there also. I am excited. I am very excited for this workshop.
I'll try to be there as well if I can drive up from Portland. It's going to be, traffic time. I just want to say I appreciate you all very much for organizing this. I did have a question though. Somebody asked if we can have access to this video recording. Where is that located at?
Spacedatahackers.com is the place to go to check out. It's got links to all of our resources. You'll find a wiki with some resources for hacking with space data as well. And you can check out all the past videos. We've had lots of great speakers from all kinds of different companies and backgrounds talking about cool stuff they're doing with space and data.
Sounds good. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
So I posted my name and phone number and address in the chat if anybody needs to contact me.
I'm seeing a couple of questions there about whether the workshop tomorrow is going to be virtual. The workshop tomorrow is going to be in person in the Seattle area. That said, if you're not in the Seattle area, check out the Space Apps website and see if there's a local event going on in your area. I'm sure they have tons of pre-events and physical events as well. And also, even if there's not one going on in your area, there is a universal event. You can participate in a virtual hackathon through the NASA website, the Space Apps website. So even if you're not in the Seattle area, there's definitely still options out there.
Do you still have to join a local group to join that one, or is it a separate group?
Good question. There is a universal one. So you can literally join online the universal one if there is not a local group in your area. Let me pull up that website right now. All right, pasting into the chat here a link to the locations that has all the locations globally. And again, you should see right at the top, if there's not any in your area, you'll see that there is a universal event in the United States. There's 1,522 people participating for people all over the world that are interested, but just don't have a physical site near them.
Barrett, you're down in LA. I see you've got Pasadena, which is always a great event. San Marino, and it looks like Chino Hills, kind of all down in that area. Saruchi.
Hey, so I have a question. Like I can see that lots of other state people are also there. So I was wondering, like, is there any possibility that under the Seattle local group, can we attend? Means can we hack this event virtually? Is there any possibility?
No, we're not offering a virtual component to this year's hackathon in Seattle. But as Bobby pointed out, there's the virtual event that's global.
Okay, so if somebody wants to go for a virtual, they have to enroll themselves in a global event. Is that one?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Now, mind you, right? Like, how you work with your team is how you work with your team. You can come to the Seattle location and, join up in a team, and, you could work from home if that is how your team is most effective working. But there's not going to be a like virtual presentations to judges, and we are expecting our hackers to be on site.
Okay, awesome. That would be helpful. So you mean to say that once we will make a team, it would be between us and the team members that we can do virtually our work, and we'll come back to the Seattle place and do the presentation.
Yes, but note that that if you need mentors, right, there we'll have some who are going to be remote and available, but you're going to have more mentors if you're in person.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
So where's the physical location for the hackathon?
Yeah, should have started off with that. It is 999 3rd Avenue in Seattle, 33rd floor. Same building that we've been in since 2017 at least. But we're just a few floors up at the Mission Accelerator Center. And
the DoD MAC.
Correct.
That's a good space, nice space. So whether you're working in Seattle or you decide to do the Universal Group or whatever, I'm more than happy to help you how I can at the hackathon and before. So feel free to contact me.
Michael, we are very lucky to have you as a member of our Space Apps community.
Yeah,
Other more
second that.
questions?
Thank you.
Hi. Is there any portal that where we can reach out to people to form a team? Like maybe
There's a Slack channel, isn't there, Michael?
There's
We
also
have the
GitHub.
Space Data Hackers. Yeah, we have the Space Data Hackers Slack, which you could join and talk about teams. Yeah, Bobby, I think we're doing Discord this year.
Okay, whichever.
Yep,
for the event.
Yeah, for the actual event, we will be doing a Discord. That is correct.
Thank you. So when will the Discord server for the event be spooled up?
Soon. We are going to be sending out a guide to all the hackers probably no later than Wednesday next week.
So is that just Seattle or is that the world?
That's just Seattle.
Okay. So how many days before Friday will that be spooled up?
Probably 2 or 3.
Okay, so I guess if I were doing it, trying to form a team, I would get on there the instant that it's up. And then if you might want to make, like the Ensign hackathons, they had a team formation channel where people would get on there, you know, hey, I am so and so, I know this, this, and this, here's my idea. And that way everybody can find one another. Worked pretty well.
We'll see if we
Yeah.
definitely we'll see if we can get it up earlier, but it'll be no later than Wednesday.
And also
We
having
use-
a point of contact who's a matchmaker is is important, that watches that list, because you know it keeps getting longer and longer and longer, and people don't necessarily go back to the beginning. So having a situational awareness of who is said what about what can point, the last person that gets on, you can point them, go back, look here, 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 and here. In my humble opinion, anyway.
More questions? Anyone? Are there any particular challenges that folks have been seeing that strike their fancy?
I still have to file down from quite a bit of them, so not really now.
Sorry, I got a question. How big can a team be?
So teams, I think there's now a cap of 6 members. Bobby, correct me if I'm wrong.
I believe so. I'm gonna have to correct that, but I think 6 sounds about right.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah. In the past, it could be a lot. But 6 is really kind of the maximum size for efficiency.
Does everybody have an idea at this point what challenge they're going to work on?
Yeah, I don't think that it looked like folks were zeroed in on that just yet. Okay. Well, if there are no other questions, I think we can wrap up. It was great to have you all on the line. Thank you again, Michael. Thank you, Bobby, and everyone here. Hope to see you at Space Apps, and whoever can make it to our AWS session tomorrow. We're really thrilled to have that. And I know that whatever you are able to make it, you'll be doing great stuff with space and data. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
Have a
you.
great evening.
All right, see you later. Bye.